Okay, today's topic is Fukushima, nuclear bomb test of the 1950s, Greenland ice melt, global warming, carbon-14, also known as nuclear carbon, and of course, the wacky weather we've had over the last 3 or 4 years. This is all going to be combined together. I do have sites for this. I will be incorporating them in the descriptions below. It may take me a few minutes to get them all in there after I've made the video, but give it about 10 minutes and then look, and it should be there. Okay, carbon-14 or bomb carbon is created by nuclear explosions, such as Fukushima. A nuclear meltdown would, of course, produce large amounts of carbon-14. Now, what has happened since the 1950s? We produce huge amounts of carbon-14 from nuclear explosions. And let's see here. The YouTube channel Seeker, we found radioactive traces from nuclear bomb in Mariana Trench. This nuclear radiation detected was carbon-14. Now, what does carbon-14 do when it's released into the atmosphere by a nuclear explosion or a meltdown? It creates, guess what? CO2, the carbon greenhouse of carbon greenhouses. That's the man that that's the molecule that really loves to be a carbon, and it loves carbon-14. And of course, this carbon or CO2, carbon dioxide, causes greenhouse effect. Now think about that. Carbon-14, nuclear carbon, all them nuclear explosions, hundreds of them, worldwide. All that carbon-14 released into the upper atmosphere, combining with the ozone, then becoming CO2 and coming down. No wonder we're having the heat waves we're having. Now let's look at Fukushima. Where does it tie in here? 4 nuclear reactor cores either melted down or partially melted down. Note down how much radioactive material was in them pools. We don't know exactly how much of that melted down. So we can assume a lot of carbon-14 is being released. We've had a heat wave in the world over the last 10 years, and it's getting consistently worse. How much of that's caused by the carbon-14 being emitted by Fukushima? And then, of course, before that, we had Chernobyl, and before that, 3 Mile Island. And we don't know how many other even smaller incidences. But we do know YouTube channel, Channel 4 News, September 11th, 2019. Hot Greenland's reasons ice melt will totally transform world. Anyway, in that particular report from the Channel 4 News, we find that Greenland is melting at a rate not expected to occur until 2100, folks. That's like 80 years from now. And it's already reached that point. What's the change? Carbon-14 coming out of Fukushima. And there's not a thing we can do about it. TEPCO really can't do much about it. And until that meltdown is discontinued, this is going to happen. Trace amounts of carbon-14 from the nuclear bomb tests of the 1950s are still available in our bodies. They even showed up in that Mariana Trench according to YouTube channel Seeker, in the Mariana Trench. Way down 11,000, I think it's like feet or meters. I don't know, I forget which. You'll have to watch the video to find out. It's either feet or meters down from the surface of the ocean that they found that stuff. This is a problem. If Fukushima is letting off carbon-14 and it's getting into the atmosphere and it's increasing the amount of CO2, this could be the reason why we're having such a large problem with ice melts far ahead of what we was expecting them to be, and far more drastic than what we expected. Plus, we had those two meteorites that crashed, one over South Greenland and one over Russia. We don't know how much CO2 those explosions caused, or how much CO2 they had. Then there's sublimes. What that means is something boils or melts, either one. In this case, I'm talking about boiling. Boils at a temperature that's usually of one atmosphere or a specific atmosphere. And that means that if it doesn't have at least a minimum amount of pressure to contain it, it'll automatically become a gas. Well, CO2 sublimes at 109 degrees Fahrenheit minus. That's negative 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Minus 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Man, you talking about cold. I mean, you stand out there with electrically powered body heaters and still freeze to death. But still, a lot of that ice that's melting is releasing CO2 that it captured back whenever in the world it was produced. I mean, you'd have to go through them core samples and tell you how long it was that it was produced. Some of that has CO2 in it too. And as it heats up, it releases that CO2. So we have a compounding effect. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Talk to us out here. Have a good one.